How powerful should a precon be? So recently Wizards released the deck list for the Miracle Worker precon. That is one of the new Duskmourn precons, and I noticed that in the comments of this video a lot of people were complaining about the lack of enchantments and saying that the deck is essentially going to be shit. So this got me thinking, how powerful and synergistic does a precon actually have to be? In this video we're going to be discussing the purpose of a precon and what does a precon have to offer in order to be considered successful. Are we looking at simple starter decks to help people learn the format of Commander, or are we looking at decks that need to be competitive straight out the box and providing you with loads and loads of value? We're going to be breaking down all of this and more in this video. Now, full disclosure, I am just expressing my opinions. I don't work for Wizards. I have no real insight on what Wizards are trying to achieve with their products, etc, etc. Now, with that said, let's get into the video. So the ultimate question of how powerful a precon should be is answered by breaking it down into 3 separate sections. Number 1, what is a precon? Number 2, what is the target audience of a precon? And number 3, what are the needs of said audience? Okay, so let's answer that first question. What exactly is a precon? A precon is a product that helps people get started by providing a pre-constructed deck. They don't have to worry about building their own. They just buy this product. It's already done for them, so they can just open it up and immediately start playing. Now, what is the target audience for a precon? So we got 2 target audiences. Number 1, which would be the primary target audience, I'd say, which is the newer player, and 2, the more experienced player. So what are the needs of these target audiences? So number 1, we'll start with the newer player. Number 1, the deck has got to be simple to understand and play. If the deck is too complicated, then it could easily just scare people off and they'll just think, you know what, this game is far too hard. I can't get my head around this. I don't really want to play. It's not fun. Number 2, it's got to be fairly inexpensive, right? Because if someone is not invested in the game yet, getting them to spend a lot of money just to get started is just going to be a future deterrent to get them playing the game. So what you want to do is make products that are fairly cheap to help them get started playing, let them build some enjoyment, some attachment towards the game, and then you can start providing them with a slightly more expensive options where they can start to branch out and expand their hobby. Number 3, you need to show variation of play styles, okay? So if you can't just have a deck that is just doing one thing, I mean, you can, but it's not ideal because new players don't understand what they like, right? So if they buy a deck and it just doesn't suit their playstyle whatsoever, they're stuck. Whereas if a deck provides a couple of different playstyles in it, then it gives them a bit more freedom, a bit more options to branch out to in the future. It makes deck building and customizing this deck more interesting as well, because they're not so tunnel visioned into one strategy. Number 4 is to provide opportunity to customize the deck. If they provide you with a deck that is just perfect out the box, 1, it would be super expensive, but 2, it completely takes the fun out of deck building, because suddenly if they have all the best options, then they have no real reason to get creative and explore different things, and they just miss out on that whole half of the hobby, which is quite sad. Okay, and the experienced player. What is needs of an experienced player? Well, number 1, the deck has got to be convenient, okay? Because the whole reason they're buying a precon is because they want to save time going through Scryfall and Architect and building this deck, which takes a lot of time and a lot of money, okay? So they want something that's convenient, that they can just pick up this precon and boom, they've got a brand new deck that they can start playing with. Number 2, it has to be providing that player with some value. If they can get a lot of value for money on the cards that are inside this precon, then they are more likely to buy it, even if they are an experienced player. And number 3, the deck has to be synergistic. It has to be fun. An experienced player doesn't want to play with a stale, boring deck. They want it to feel like it's working. They want to feel like they're capable of competing with their friends' decks, and they're not going to have to do too much to it. Otherwise, it's pointless buying the precon in the first place. Okay, so here we have the Miracle Worker deck list. So this is what a lot of people I saw were complaining about in the deck reveal. So the main complaint is that this deck is an enchantment deck and does not have enough enchantments. That's what people are saying. Now, I've had a little look. First things glance, you see 15 enchantments, right? But we also have 10 enchantment creatures, okay? So like the Master of Keys, enchantment creature, Soaring Lightbringer, enchantment creature, and so on, so on, so on. If you go down, there are 10 of these. So 10 plus 15 is 25, people. That is 25 enchantments you have. Now, Command Zone did a video about advice on deck building and stuff. In that video, they say that if your deck has a thing that it wants to do or a theme that it has, so for example, this would be enchantments, having 30 cards of that thing is optimal, okay? Optimal. Now this has 25. It's not that far off, okay? So no, it might not be perfect. It doesn't have 30 enchantments, but it's got 25. It's pretty damn close. Now, as I said, you've got to remember this is a Precon. It's not supposed to be perfect out of the box, okay? So I think 25 is fine. Now, I've not played with the deck, so I don't really know, and it's hard to tell. I'm not good enough or experienced enough to just be able to look at a deck list and know whether that's going to be good or bad. But I can do simple maths, okay? And 25 enchantments in an Enchantment Cares deck sounds pretty sounds pretty good to me. I've also looked, there's about 15 to 17 Enchantment Cares cards. So just because a card isn't an enchantment, there's still cards in here that care about enchantments. For example, Mesa Enchantress. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. So it's not an enchantment, but it's still going with the theme of the deck, right? Now, what else is this deck doing? Because it doesn't just have one theme, it's got a few. So the backup commander, the Master of Keys, it wants you to have enchantments in your graveyard. And then it allows you to cast enchantments from your graveyard for an escape cost, okay? I'm not going to get too much into that, but basically it means that your graveyard just becomes almost like your hand. So a milling strategy where you're milling yourself would be very, very nice. Now, does this deck have loads of that? No, it does not. But it is a branch if you would like to go down. If you play with this deck, you get out the Master of Keys, it does some things, and you're like, this is cool, I want to do this more, and I prefer this to Aminato. Great. Put the Master of Keys as your commander and customize the deck to be more synergistic with the Master of Keys, okay? We have an alternative route to go down. It's not just simple this or that, okay? But it still works together. They're still working around enchantments, but in different ways. Now, I love that. Other stuff that this deck has, manipulation of the top of your library because of the way Aminato works. So it's not all enchantments. There's some cards here that just allow you to surveil, which also helps with your graveyard stuff. Lots of scrying. There's 3 temples in here, all scry lands. There's other cards in here that lets you scry. So lots, there you go, whenever it attacks, scry free. So, you know, yes, it might seem a little bit all over the place, but that's because it's not trying to be so optimal, so streamlined. It's not the point of a Precon. And, well, not in my opinion, and if you watch the video, they talk about that in the video, that they like to have they like to make their Precons not just so one-dimensional. They like to chop and change, which is why sometimes they are not going to feel perfect out of the box, okay? They're not supposed to. At least that's my outlook on it. Now, there are other complaints about the mana base, saying that there are too many tap lands in here. I understand that, because they've shown their hand. They've shown that they can give us really nice mana bases with like the Bloomborough commander decks. So there's no reason why they can't do the same thing again. So that is understandable. This is the only 3-color commander deck, so 3-color commander decks are always going to be a little bit harder on the mana base, so just bear that in mind. But again, it's a simple and easy room for improvement. If you want to improve this deck, then a great way to start would just be to improve the mana base. Suddenly the deck's going to feel a lot quicker, a lot smoother, and it's going to be able to keep up that little bit more. Now, there is a downside to this where I think of my Lord of the Rings deck as a perfect example, where the deck just feels all over the place, and in my opinion, the deck, it was not very fun for me to play. So if they go too much into trying to do too much different things, then the deck does not feel fun to play. The deck still needs to work. It still needs to be fun to play. And I feel like some of the people are saying this deck is not going to feel nice to play. Now, as I've said, I can't really speak for that. I haven't got my hands on the deck. I don't know what it's like. I respect the fact this deck is going to be slow. I think I said that anyway in the way that Aminato works. You're not just coming out the gate all guns blazing. This deck is going to be a slower deck, which I don't think is a problem. But yes, the many tap lands do not help with that. I understand that. So yes, maybe the deck will not feel great, but I don't think it will be down to the amount of enchantments. Yes, the deck will feel better with more enchantments in it, of course, and there are easily some cards that you could take out here and put in some enchantment creatures easily, but you've got some direction. It's not a bad thing. And when I look at this, most of these cards do not feel out of place at all. I can see a reason for pretty much all of these cards, so that bare minimum is, I think, all we really need. Okay, this is a bit weird. Metamorphosis Fanatic. It's a reanimation card. We don't really have any other reanimation strategy in here, but it has Miracle. Okay, so Miracle is another theme of this deck. So, you know, it's got a lot going on. It has got a lot going on. So it does hold the potential risk of being like the Lord of the Rings deck, the Mordor deck, I should say, where it's a bit all over the place. It does have that potential. Does that mean you shouldn't buy this deck? No, I don't think so. I still think this is a great starting point at the very least, which I think, again, is what Precon should be aiming to do. This is not a bad product, okay? It just might not be coming out all guns blazing. The problem is they've made some Precons that are really good, like these Blumbro stuff, like the animated army Precon that I've been playing with, just feels so good out of the box. It's just bam, it's just doing what it needs, and it feels good. So, and it still feels like there's room for improvement. So I understand the argument that, you know, that it could feel maybe a little bit nicer, but hey ho, we'll just have to see.